Hi lovely booktubers. Welcome back to my channel, Raina Read Stuff. I'm Debs. I'm here in the book shack. It's Sunday. I'm going to do my weekly reading wrap up. And I'm going to get it done before the football starts because I want to watch it. I didn't watch the tennis today. I'm not really into tennis, but I do like the football. I've had a much better week this week. Hope you all have. Um, what have I read? What should we start with? I read a couple of, I listened to a couple of audiobooks. With all the events that I'm doing, you'd think I would concentrate on all the events I'm doing. But I finished a book last week in the car and it automatically moved on to something else. And that's what it moved on to. The Riverman by R.B. Croft and narrated by Dominic West. And it is an Audible original. I've not read an Audible original before. Don't quite know where I got it from. It must have been free. Anyway, The Riverman, I actually really enjoyed listening to it. It's about a policeman in a village in the north of England. Well, he was a policeman. In fact, he was the chief of this small town's police force. And then there was some incident about a bicycle, a very expensive bicycle that was locked up in the town and there for days, and nobody knew who it belonged to. And he was convinced that someone had been taken off and you wouldn't leave this value of bicycle just chained up in a random town. Anyway, everybody thought he was ridiculous. He's in his early 60s, so they retired him. And the new guy who comes in doesn't really like him, and so properly retires him, and he becomes a police community support officer. Then, oh, and his wife dies, and for some reason that you don't really find out about, his children aren't speaking to him, and so he loses touch with his granddaughter. But then, a young man is found murdered, brutally, brutally murdered. He is hanging from a bridge by his ankles into the river. And when they pull him out, his head's missing. They throw in, because it's a small town, it's got no CID or anything, they throw in a detective from the nearest major town who starts showboating about all sorts of things and generally annoys everybody else. And the press turn up, mainly because they've been invited. Anyway, he decides that these murders this murder has been committed by a drug dealer. Then there's another murder, and another young man is mutilated. Someone is arrested for the murders, but our guy, whose name just completely escapes me, isn't convinced that this is the right route. He has spotted something in the bushes that is suspicious, and he's called out by a young girl after he goes to visit a school and hands out his cards. He's called out by this young girl who's been left alone by her parents, He says there's a monster in her garden, and her garden backs onto a river. Then a friend of his takes him to see her mother. I wish I could remember his name. And his mother talks about the Riverman, who was a local legend. But she says he was a local legend a long time ago. And the rest of it is then about him seeking evidence with his friend, who is a member of the River Police, to try and prove the existence of this Riverman. It wasn't good, as in the writing wasn't brilliant. But you know what? Actually, sitting in the car listening to it, I found it quite entertaining. I'm not sure I'd recommend it to anyone. Then, Audible, because it finished that midway through a journey, I listened to this, Run, by Rich Restucci. A plague, a man-made plague virus, turns the entire world into zombies, other than a handful of survivors. One of the survivors and his daughter and his father, he is a member of the police force. They are in San Francisco. His daughter, who lives with her mother in Boston, has come to stay with him for the holiday. All of a sudden, there are zombies everywhere. So this is a zombie apocalypse. It's quite fast paced. It's quite ridiculous in places. It's quite entertaining. It stops just at the wrong point, obviously, in order to make you buy the second book. I'm not going to do that, because as much as I found this generally entertaining, it was quite ridiculous. So overnight we have a zombie apocalypse, and then we have people trying to get to Alcatraz, where they're going to hole themselves up. On top of that, you have a load of gangbangers who are just intent on capturing women who haven't been infected and killing all the men so they can start a new population. And as they're trying to attract Alcatraz, miraculously, a nuclear submarine appears and blows half of them out of the water. On top of that, you've got a serial killer who is a schizophrenic serial killer who takes a shine to Sam, the young daughter of our policeman. He really likes her, though. It's not that he wants to eat her, to kill her or anything. He really genuinely likes her. And the zombies do not touch him for some reason, which turns out to be also quite ridiculous. There's a lot of blood, a lot of gore, and a lot of ridiculousness. But again, I quite enjoyed it. Should have saved it for Garb August, really. Um, Physical books. Neither of those two, by the way, were for anything useful, like the huge number of book events that I'm doing. This, however, was Rogue July, um, in an event set up by Roy at Roy Reads Anything, of which I am a co-host. We have been discovering Hugh Walpole, who was a hugely successful author. This was written in the 1930s. It's the first in his Herries Chronicle books, and Rogue Herries is our titular character. It follows the life of him, and mainly his son and his youngest daughter, although another daughter is mentioned, um, but doesn't play an enormous role in the book. I thought this was brilliant. It's based in the Lake District, and the weather, mainly rain, mist, fog, snow, um, comes over as almost a character in itself. I love the way he describes the mountains and the countryside. His characters are pretty much all flawed. They're just not what I was expecting, and I really liked that. Um, Certainly, Rogue Herries is very flawed. He is, well, he starts off as a womanizer, a drinker, a gambler. He switches between bouts of kindliness and warmth and then this huge temper. Um, his son, who is a child when the book begins and an adult and father when the book ends, grows up honest and kind and strong, but he's not overbright. So he doesn't become this archetypal hero. He also is slightly flawed. Um, but I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. I can highly recommend this. I am now moving on to read the second book, which is called Judith Paris. I've started it. There are, I want to say, four in the Harry's Chronicle series, and then also he's written two prequels. But this is charting the family over the series is charting the family over a period of about 200 years. It was really good. Now, what else have I read? Giallo July. I was a little disappointed in the modern Giallo that I read last week. So I went for something that was more classic. The Case of the Grinning Gorilla by Stanley Gardner. This is a Perry Mason book. I have never read a Perry Mason book. I read this from cover to cover in a very short space of time, probably a couple of hours, first thing in the morning. I am going to read more Perry Mason books. This was fabulous. I absolutely love classic crime. And this, I mean, most people will know Perry Mason is a lawyer. The prompt for Giallo July was something with an animal in the title. Grinning Gorillas. This book starts with Perry Mason purchasing, for an unknown reason, a box of effects from a woman who is believed to have been drowned at sea for $5 from an auction house to sort of do his friend, who is the auctioneer, a favour. Starts reading through these diaries and photograph books and other bits and pieces that were in this box, and senses that there's a bit of a mystery there. The woman concerned has kept a journal, and the journal gives absolutely no indication that she was feeling remotely suicidal. Then an employee of the man she was working for, a man who is a bit strange and unbelievably wealthy, and who was conducting experiments on monkeys and gorillas to see if it was possible to hypnotize them. One of his employees turns up at Perry Mason's office and offers him a fiver, which is what he's paid, for this box of ephemera. And when Perry Mason says no, he is then offered $1,000 for this box of books. And that starts ringing alarm bells. This is a classic crime story. It's fun. It's fast paced. It just drags you in. I love them. I absolutely love these. I am certainly going to read some more Perry Mason. So that was Giallo July. Ulysses. We're now down to the last couple of weeks of Ulysses. This is the readathon that was set up by Greg at another bibliophile reads, and Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics. We're called the Ulysses 6 now. There are 6 of us reading this book and discussing it. I'm loving our discussions. We discuss on Discord, but we also have live chats as well. And the other 3, apart from me, obviously, are Pat at Book Chat with Pat, Will at Will Chambers, and Roy at Roy Reads Anything. Anyone who's visited this channel and has seen my weekly wrap-ups over the last couple of weeks will know that I've struggled with this book. I'm getting to the stage now where I still don't think it was the greatest novel of the 20th century. For me, it's too inaccessible to be the greatest novel of the 20th century. I am more interested in it, though. I've got to the stage where I may possibly, sometime far in the future, read it again. There you go. I said it. The words came out of my mouth. I think the more that you go through it, and obviously I've also said that I am reading Patrick Hastings' book, A Guide to James Joyce's Ulysses, which has also been invaluable. I think it is intriguing me. There's an awful lot of words for what in effect is a very short story, plot-wise. But also, his play with the language, whether or not I understand it, I'm finding more interesting now. So, I'm midway through episode 17 of 18. Episode 17 is a middling length compared to some in the books. Episode 18 is very, very short. So I'm nearly at the end. Still don't like it, per se, but I am finding it intriguing. For Rocket Summer, so she trying to get the picture up. This week, for Rocket Summer, which is an event organised by Michael K. Vaughan and has a load of co-hosts, it's about reading classic science fiction. So the first week of July was something from 1939 or earlier. This last week was the 1940s. And I tried an author that I've never read before. And I read Slan by AE van Vogt. This was really interesting. I found it really fun. A Slan is a person who is an offshoot of the human race. There are two types of Slan. The first type has tentacles coming out of their head, and they can read people's thoughts. The second type of Slan don't have the tentacles, they can't read people's thoughts. But the Slan are hugely intelligent, physically superior to humans. And whether or not they are telepathic, they can be seen as an advancement, I suppose, of the human race. The humans hate them and try to kill them at every opportunity. And this book starts with a mother and son walking through a human town. They've tried to disguise their tentacles. They wear wigs and dye their hair and things. The son is about 9 years old, and he has to. His father's been killed, and he has to find the research and things that his father was working on before he's dead. He was killed. His mother is then killed. She tells him to run. He runs. He knows what he's got to do. And Slans develop earlier than humans do. So they start reaching adulthood in their mid-teens. He is spotted and runs off to hide, finds a place to hide, thinks everyone's gone, and then this human woman, this older human woman, she doesn't capture him, she doesn't force him to go with her, but she's a chancer. She lives on the edge of society. She says he can help her and she can hide him. So for a few years he lives with her. He does discover his father's research and what he was working on, and he then tries to develop this research further and tries to find a way that both species of Slan and humans can live and work together. I loved this. I thought it was great. Certainly read some more of his. Yeah, I thought it was wonderful. Finally, of books I've completed, I was watching Pat, my friend Pat, at Book Chat with Pat. I was watching a weekly wrap up this week. She mentioned this. She said I'd love it. Oh boy, was she right. Claire Keegan, Foster. Claire Keegan, I've read one book of hers before, the Small Things Like These, and I didn't enjoy it half as much as this. This was just lovely. It's about a young girl in a family with lots and lots of children in Ireland, and the mother's pregnant again, and her father takes her off to some relatives miles away, and basically palms her off with them. She doesn't know to start with, but they'd had a son who died, but they take her into their home, and they look after her, and this is a book about discovering relationships and finding your place. And the way Claire Keegan writes is with such simplicity, but such power. This is a beautiful, beautiful book. It's very short. It's a novella. It's about 80, 90 pages. Read it. If you haven't read it before, read it. It's great. Now, other than that, I plan to finish this evening for Summer of Sport. My Father and Other Working Class Football Heroes by Gary Imlach. I bought this because I was interested. I have this fundamental objection to the amount of money footballers are paid. But I am interested in the times where football was a working class sport played by working class people who were performed in front of working class audiences. Now most people can't afford a ticket to a match. So I thought I'd pick this up, and I did. And I then found out that Gary Imlach actually is a sports journalist. His father, Stuart, was a Scot who came to England to play football in the 50s. And his most successful and best time playing football was at Nottingham Forest. I live in Nottingham. So this I'm finding absolutely fascinating. As well as being a footballer, he was training as a joiner, and he had to carry on his apprenticeship when he moved from Scotland to England. He played for a couple of different teams, but then ended up at Notts Forest. And there's a bit in here that said, if the seats were broken at the City Ground, at lunchtime he'd come home, get his tools, and go back and mend the seats, and then carry on training. It's just, and they were paid so little. They were actually worse off sometimes than the people in the crowd. Can't say that about today's footballers. I'm also continuing with The Story of Russia by Orlando Figes, which I'm finding really interesting. We're almost up to Napoleon now. So, that's my reading for the week. I hope you've had a fabulous week. I've really enjoyed this week, actually. Rogue Herries also counts as a Big Books of Summer, which is an event organised by Sue Jackson. Ulysses obviously will count towards that as well. The Story of Russia is for Historiathon. And there was something else. What was the other thing? Oh, Ulysses also counts towards the banned books, 24 and 24, which is a year-long event that MJ set up. So that's it from me. I really hope you've had a fabulous week. I hope you're reading some lovely things. I really hope this cough goes soon because it's annoying me now. We're at about the 70-day mark of this 100-day cough. But that's it for me for today. I shall speak to you again very soon. Have lots of fun. Thank you for stopping by. Bye for now.